Welcome first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. What about fucking Colin? Why does he not have a fucking job? Because he's still being whiteballed. Why is Tom not speaking out about that? He should be his biggest fucking ally. And he hasn't said one fucking thing. A lot of people that have come on this show, I don't know why, they've gotten some good fucking jobs afterwards. Jim Rome in the jungle. It's right here in the Sports Deli, baby. We got some good ass karma right here. Let's fucking go.
I love it.
Man.
I love it.
We hope you enjoy today's show, everyone. All right, let's rock and roll. So today's podcast is brought to you by my Amazon shop. Check it out at amazon.com/shop/the Sports Deli. And you can see all the products that I've done videos on, my idea list, and my shoppable photos. I may make a commission on any of the things that you watch or see, but it's at no extra cost to you. Enjoy today's show. Do we have to refer to him as Mr. Duncan? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, please, I'm very formal, Secretary Duncan.
There you go. Exactly.
Just put a sir on the end of it. Secretary Duncan, sir.
All right, let's rock and roll here, ladies and gentlemen. We're so honored to welcome on the 7th day of Pride Awareness Month and 16 days away from the 51st anniversary of Title IX, one of the most historic pioneers and trailblazeHERS of women's basketball, not only on the West Coast, nationwide and worldwide, but for Asians and Asian Americans everywhere, the pride of Sacramento, California, Colleen Matsuhara. Colleen's global impact has led her into some of the most profound spaces, from being the Secretariat of Basketball Competition for both the men and women at the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, California, to one of the most iconic and historic basketball movies of all time, Spike Lee's Love and Basketball, to the new docuseries If Not For Them, because of her courage, passion for basketball, determination, and unwavering commitment to do whatever it takes to give women from all walks of life what they so richly deserve, and what her parents and her father in particular fought for, a seat at the table. She played 3 sports in college and is in one of her college's Hall of Fame, and today you will hear the rest of the story. She was born the same day as Louis Armstrong, Meghan Markle, and former President of the United States, Barack Obama. And the same year as my mom, the late Robin Williams, Marilyn Monroe, the Italian Stallion, and Oprah Winfrey. She's coached some incredible players over the years at her various stops, from Notre Dame to Nebraska to UCLA to the Los Angeles Sparks of the WNBA, like Hall of Famer Lisa Leslie, to so many others. And although she's retired, she's still very proactive and doing whatever she can to educate, motivate, and inspire kids and adults alike to not only remember the correct herstory domestically and abroad, but to continue to help shatter glass ceilings and open the doors for the next generation of sheroes and rock stars. You can find her on LinkedIn. Colleen, we're so humbled and honored to have you join us today. And full transparency, when I coached against you when I was at Mesa College and you were at West LA, I had no idea who you were. I remember a game specifically at your place, but truly honored and humbled. We're Everyone deserves a seat at the table, especially a 2-time national champion, someone besides me who has their CBEST certification, although mine has expired, full transparency, and someone born the same year as my mom. So absolutely, you got a seat at my table anytime. So welcome.
Thank you, Mike. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you asking me to be on, and all your background info was awesome. But the bottom line is basically I'm old, but I continue to, I coached basketball for 40 years, but my passion remains the same, as you mentioned. I think as for my birthday, I always tell, when people say, when's your birthday? I always say it's the same day as Barack Obama.
That's right.
And I think I told you in a text, I always tell people my birthday is in August
Right.
4th. So that means I'm a Leo. So my close friends that know me say I really roar like a lion. But on top of that, I was born in the year of the tiger. So double roar. And
Absolutely.
like I said, I really appreciate being on. So let's, you pulled out the chair for me. So I'm sitting at your table here, and it's an honor.
Absolutely. Well, if you'd allow me to push the chair in for you, then we can definitely get rocking and rolling here. So, I've asked a lot of people this, whether it's Jay Billis from ESPN, the incredible women that we've had on the show, and many others. And sometimes I don't start off this way, but but I'm curious, and I know you've shared this before, but growing up at a time when Title IX wasn't even remotely close to a thing, and you've shared the story about when you're a little bit older, the league that you played in, that your dad was a part of, but
Mhm.
I think it's important not only for representation's sake in various spaces that you represent, but just that we don't ever forget our history. So share with everybody, what it was like being a young girl, because we've said this many times on the show, girls quit way more than boys do.
Mhm, mhm,
And I would imagine back then when, as Brenda Van Langen, who's coming on in 2 weeks,
mhm.
talks about it in the If Not For Them docuseries that you're a part of, competition wasn't ladylike. It wasn't a feminine thing back then, but you certainly had a fire in your belly from the jump. So tell everyone about what it was like being Colleen growing up.
Growing up in Sacramento, California, which is my hometown, my father, Yosh, was very active in the Japanese American community, in the basketball leagues. The churches in Sacramento formed a league. And so he was very involved coaching teams or setting up the schedules and the competitions. So from the third grade, I started going with him to the gyms. And the first thing that I had an aha moment was when I went to the gym or had practice, it got me out of doing the dishes at home. So I would always want to go, of course, to the gym with my father. And that's when I first picked up a basketball. And I even remember going into the garage and dribbling to see if I could dribble with my right hand 200 times and switch over to my left hand because I was very competitive. I wanted to be the best. And my dad continued to, both of my parents actually supported me throughout whatever I wanted to do. But I remember, Mike, that growing up in elementary school, I think I was playing catch with a softball outside in our front yard. And at that time, like you said, it wasn't cool to be a woman athlete. And I would see some kids like ride by on their bikes. I sort of would catch and hold the ball, sort of put the mitt behind my back so they wouldn't see what I was doing. We would toss the ball back and forth across the street. And I specifically remember that, like, I was like, well, I don't want to people thinking I'm an oddball, that I'm throwing a softball when softball wasn't real popular there. But sticking with basketball, and I figured that if you play basketball, rain, sleet, or shine, or fog, you could still play indoors. And my dad also played himself. He played in what we call the old men's league. That was just the informal name, but he played until he was in his early 60s. And it was an adult league, an adult rec league. And he would go once a week and play in it and then coach on the weekends. And then I got the Japanese American Basketball League is very, very well known and developed, especially here on the West Coast in California. And we traveled on weekends to play out of town, to the Bay Area, to Los Angeles, to Central California. And it just became I think it became more of a cultural thing where families and friends and players could meet in competition, but yet stay in touch. And it was really a great time for me. When I got to high school, I actually tried out for the high school team. I made the team, but I had another aha moment when my high school coach said, "Hey, Colleen, would you like to help me coach the team?" I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to be a coach. I want to play. And the competition in the JA leagues at that time was much more competitive. The ball handling and the pressing and the running were a lot faster than what I found in high school. So basically, I quit my high school team to go play in the Asian leagues.
Wow, a lot of things come to mind. That's incredible. So just to give people perspective, okay, we're talking about the late 50s, sorry, Colleen, and early 60s.
Mhm.
And this was a girls only, right? Not co-ed.
Correct, but there was a parallel boys league that was going on, and a lot of times we would travel together with the boys team that was connected to our club team, I guess.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, no, but I understand that. But the significance of that when we know what was going on in the South,
Mhm.
and even in the Midwest at that time. And so I mean, did you get pushback at all? Like, I mean, I find it fascinating in the 50s and 60s. when we haven't even reached the civil rights period of time with, Malcolm and
Right.
Malcolm and Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy, that this is something going on. It's just mind blowing to me. So there was no pushback, even when you went down to LA or anything. It was just sort of like, this is accepted. And did it manifest itself to other areas of the country because people got word of it?
Mike, I don't ever remember having a pushback whenever we would travel because we stayed within the Asian community.
Right. That's
So we
amazing.
always ran into, Asian teams. We never played any outside
Wow.
non-Asian teams. And just to
Wow.
go back a little further, when I researched, some of this for another project, after the Japanese American returned, after they were unjustly relocated out of their homes and all their property at the start of World War II, and my parents actually spent time in a relocation camp in Topaz, Utah. And when the
Wow.
war was over and the Japanese Americans were allowed to return to the West Coast, there was 120,000 Japanese Americans on the West Coast that got unjustly, their lives were just changed drastically, where they had to have like 2 days notice to pack up basically 2 suitcases and get transported to the inner remote areas, thinking, with the US, thinking there was going to be spies among them and
Right.
sabotage. But when they came back to the Sacramento area and relocated and tried to resume what they would try to be a normal life, that's when the basketball community really took off, because apparently they played it in the relocation camps as part of their recreation. And it just came back. They played it before the war, took a pause, came back and restarted it. And it's been booming ever since. In fact, just yesterday, I ran into a friend, and there's a group here in Sacramento called the Sacramento Barons. And apparently last week they had the 50th reunion of the Sacramento Barons organization. And I heard 400 people showed up just to, be around former foes or former
Unbelievable.
teammates, coaches. And it sounded like a grand time was had by all.
Wow. I'm trying to let that breathe for a second. That's incredible. And I would imagine, obviously in the docuseries, if not for them, they're going to chronicle a lot of the historical components of, girls and women's basketball.
Right.
So if you guys have a chance to check that out once it comes out, definitely do so, because I saw the preview. And obviously Colleen's in it. Brenda Van Langen is the executive director, and she's going to be on in a couple weeks. It's truly incredible. I couldn't stop it. Like, I just watched it straight through, and it was just mind blowing to me, because there's so many women that a lot of us don't know about, and on the men's side, we know the men's history.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth Galloway McQuitter, who's also in it, one of the legends of the ball, played in the original W. She talks about this all the time, how we don't know the women's history like we do the men's history.
That
for
is
obvious
so
reasons.
true.
Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead.
because at the coaches convention this past end of March, beginning of April, at the Final Four in Dallas, Liz McQuitter Galloway gave a session, her and Trish Roberts, on the history, her story of women's basketball. And I can guarantee you there were probably the majority of the people in the room that were not aware of all this. In fact, it was a great question. Someone said, what does AIAW stand for? Because they're used to the NCAA only. So, I mean, when I heard that question, I go, wow, it really is, a time for people to become knowledgeable and educated about the background of women's basketball.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that a little later.
Okay.
So you go on to play in the leagues. Again, shout out to your parents and your dad for, just introducing you to sport and the lessons that obviously you learn through sport as a result of that you apply to life in so many different ways, and paying it forward. And, look where we are now, which we'll talk about also in a little while. But you got a love for community college early on. As did I. I went to Mesa College, out of high school, and you went to Sac City. And then you obviously continued on to Cal State Sacramento. So talk about those experiences. Did you find pushback there? Was it another great experience because California was sort of ahead of the curve
Mhm.
you know, in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's not what we called it back then, but you know,
Right.
you understand my point. Yeah.
Yes. My career at Sacramento City, the reason why I went there is in high school, I used to go to summer school and everything. I had so many credits. I could have graduated high school a year early,
Wow.
but I wanted to be the first graduating class out of a new high school here in town at that time, John F. Kennedy. So I went in the fall semester and I graduated in January. And one of the other reasons why I graduated early, I didn't want to swim. I had first period physical education, and we were going to, John F. Kennedy had a swimming pool. I said, you know, I'm not
Wow.
going to swim and have my smell like chlorine the rest of the day or blah, blah, blah. So I graduated early and I went to Sac City because it was, you know, it was just there. And
Right.
I ended up I majored in psychology. I took a psych class and the professor was so great. He inspired me. I majored in psychology,
Wow.
and then I played 3 sports at Sac City, actually, and I loved it there.
Right.
Made some great lifelong connections there. My coach there was just a great mentor for me. And then I went to Sac State and I played 3 sports there. And I don't ever recall having any pushback ever in both of those places, but I like going to school so much. I stayed in college for, gosh, probably 7 years. I kept finding majors and minors. So when I went to Cal State Sacramento, a lot of my teammates were kinesiology majors. So one day I said, let me go to a class with you. And it was a motor learning. And I said to myself,
Mm.
hey, this is a lot like psychology. So I double majored in psychology and kinesiology at Sac State. And I had taken so many other courses that I had a minor in biology and education. So I felt like I was a professional student, but why rush and get out into the cold, cruel world? There was no professional leagues at that time.
Mm.
So I thought, well, I'm having a great time here. And my parents were very supportive of education. I was very fortunate. And so I just prolonged my college graduation.
Wow. Well, and then that led you into the coaching world. I don't know if it was that simple,
Mhm,
but you clearly saw your dad coaching. And so
mhm.
what type of coach was he? Was he like this tough, like no excuse, find solutions, or was he just, hey, find your way, massaged you, was more gentle and loving along the way? Or somewhere in the middle?
I think he was a little both, Mike. Now,
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
have actually talked to one of the Sacramento residents that I stayed in touch with, actually played for my father before
Wow.
the war. And she says, she's told me this several times. She said, your dad was the best coach we ever had. He was real tough on us, but she said, when your dad said jump, we just said, how high? And she said, I remember one time, I think they went to either Seattle or San Francisco. They were losing at halftime. She said he went into the halftime room and he cussed them out, and they came out and came from behind and won that game. So she says, you know, when your dad said something and, you know, would curse like that, we knew he was mad. So we thought we
Mm.
better shake out of the doldrums and turn it
Mm.
on. And I
Wow.
think, you know, he would also he would be very encouraging. He didn't disparage or, you know, put down players. He coached me for a while, but even at home, when we'd finish dinner, we had a little hoop in the backyard. He would always tell me, hey, Colleen, let's go out in the backyard. And, you know, at that time, he says, if you develop a jump shot, you're going to be unstoppable. But I kept thinking to
Wow.
myself, I think I already am unstoppable. But that was
Of
just because,
course.
you know, he was always after me to try and make me better. And for that, I've always been appreciative.
Wow. So how far along in your career did he have a chance to watch you coach, pay it forward, and just see what his, you know, legacy did for you?
My dad used to always try and come to my games, first of all, when I played at Sac City and Sac State.
Mm.
And then when I got my first coaching job at Cal State Fullerton, that was down in SoCal, and he wasn't much up for traveling, but, you know, he always would want to know, did we win or keep up with our scores? I remember that when I became the head coach at UC Irvine, and we did win the Big West tournament and
Mm.
went on to the NCAAs that year. he was very emotional. He was
Oh,
watching, and my mom said, Dad was so happy he cried, and
oh,
he wasn't one to show his emotions a lot, so that meant a lot to me. And he continued to follow my career. When I went to the University of Texas, he and my mom also came to visit and were able to see a game, and so he followed me. He passed away in 85, so
wow.
he followed me all the time, though.
Mm.
Anytime I'd call here my mom, he would always say, "Did you win?" or "What was the score?" I mean, it wasn't just like, he wanted to know the details. Well, how did the players play? Things like that.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. Where do you think he learned just the incredible skills that he had to coach? I mean, was it just the way he was raised and it was just easy to apply it to coaching? Because, I mean, we're talking about somebody that was born, what was he born in the 20s or 30s? And
1921. He was born
yeah,
in 1921. I think he just played as he was growing up, and he
that's
played in
amazing.
the Asian leagues. My uncle played also, so I think he probably used what he learned as a player and maybe translated it as what he felt into coaching.
Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have two younger brothers. They both played. One of
Okay.
them played. They both played baseball, but
Oh,
they weren't as persistent or dedicated as I was to basketball.
interesting. Wow, man, if that's not a call to action to everybody out there in terms of mentorship, and you just don't realize how you're going to impact someone's life, and even if they don't continue to play sports in college, or if it's just recreationally or high school, that's the last experience they ever play, which Jay Billis talks about all the time, to make it the best experience for the kids, especially the girls, because you never know if they don't ever play again. You want them
Right.
to walk away feeling good about themselves and have life skills.
Right.
So, man, shout out to your parents and your dad. Obviously, you've had a lot of mentors. And so, the NCAA hadn't been formed yet. That's one of the questions I want to ask you later. And you talked about the governing body earlier that was in place at the time, and you went to UCLA. So I'm just curious about UCLA because obviously John Wooden,
Mhm.
the Wizard of Westwood, and just the history of that place. How was it there? Was it something that you expected, or did it blow you away, or were you just grinding and head in the sand and just doing your thing to try and be a part of something bigger than yourself?
Well, growing up, I actually was a huge, huge UCLA Bruins fan with John Wooden as a coach. I followed that team, would always, hope that they would win the title. And in fact, I remember, I think when I was in high school, I even flew down to LA once, or and went to watch a practice in Poly Pavilion,
Wow.
got up in the stands. But the way I got to UCLA, if you don't mind, I just want to backtrack.
Absolutely.
When I was playing at Sac State, I would hear or see this team, Cal State Fullerton, play. And one day we were at I think a regional tournament, and I saw Cal State Fullerton play. And the coach at that time was Billy Moore.
Right.
And her teams were full court pressing, fast breaking. They had a point guard, and they were blowing people off the floor. And I thought, this is, because it was the way that my dad loved to play, or he would always say, if you press and fast break. And so I
Billy
started.
Moore is a woman, just so that everybody
Yeah,
knows.
yeah. Coach Billie Jean Moore.
Right. There you go.
And so I watched her teams play, and I used to try and work John Wooden basketball camp in the summer. So one summer I went down there, and it was John Wooden, Billy Moore basketball camp. And talk about being in the right place at the right time. I was sitting in some lounge at a college, I think it was Cal Lutheran, where the counselors all got assigned to work with a coach. And the camp director, I drove down with a friend of mine, and she took one seat and I took the seat next to her. So we're going around the room, and the guy's name was Chris Smith. And Chris says, "And Colleen, you'll be with Coach Moore." And, went further around the room. And I'm thinking to myself, I think I just got assigned to Billy Moore, which is why I went down there. I mean,
Unbelievable.
it's like it was luck and providence all in the same time. So I spent the week being her counselor. And then after camp ended, I drove down. I said to myself, I'm going to go check out Cal State Fullerton, because by this time I had I had graduated and was going to start student teaching in the fall at Sac State. So I went down there, I just was roaming the halls, reading all the information that was up in the, at that time, bulletin boards, and looking in the gym. And I run into Billy. She goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking maybe I want to go to grad school here. If I did, can I come watch practices?" She goes, "Of
Wow.
course." So I, looked into applying at Cal State Fullerton for grad school to get my master's in sports administration, and started my student teaching in the fall at Sac State. And I was out of high school and I hated it. I mean, it
Wow.
was, doing the lesson plans, and the high school level, it was just a little bit different for me. The students weren't interested, or they didn't want to really be there. They were, typical high school students, growing into teenagers, getting their hormones going and everything.
Oh yeah.
Well, out of the blue, then I was walking down the hall one day, and my athletic director at that time, who was Dr. Judith Holland,
Mhm.
and she says, "Hey, come in here. There's a phone call. Billy Moore would like to talk to you." And so I went into Dr. Holland's office, and Billy said, "Hey, Colleen, I'm just wondering, I have an assistant coaching job that I just opened. Would you be interested in it?" I said, sure. And I said, "When do I have to be there?" She goes, "Well, why don't you go ahead and finish student teaching and I'll wait for you." Well, the semester wasn't going to be over, Mike, until January. I said, "No, I'll come now." With that, Dr. Holland almost fell out of her chair, took the phone from me and said, "Oh, we have a little crisis going on here." So hung up the phone call. I said, "Listen, I hate student teaching. I don't want to do it. I'm
Wow.
moving to Fullerton." So that's how I got to Fullerton. So spent 3 years there. And at the end of 76, 77 season, UCLA has an opening for their head coach. Billy gets the job and allows me to go with her as an assistant coach. So I'm in like basketball heaven, being at UCLA, where the great John Wooden was the coach, and just walking the campus. I mean, even when I go back there to watch practices or watch games, I always come out I come out of the parking lot and I'll look up at Bruin Walk to see all the students coming down. It's just my tradition to just stay connected to the campus there and being a Bruin.
Oh my goodness. That is an incredible story. And I can just picture, you taking the phone, the old school phone with the
Yeah.
cord attached to it,
Right.
right?
That's
You
exactly
know,
what it was.
and either the rotary or the buttons on the phone, and just
Mhm.
that whole moment that'll be etched, in your mind forever. And the rest is history, as Paul Harvey used to say.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Um,
So
so
Mike, had I not been sitting in that one chair in
wow.
the student lounge at the camp and got
Right.
assigned to Billy, who knows where I'd be today, right? And she went on to become the first U.S. Olympic coach. So
Right.
working under her, she definitely was my biggest mentor.
I don't want to jump ahead because I think it's important, just like we talked about with your dad, that you pay homage to, your mentors in a way where some of the things that you incorporate into your style, right? Because we all
Mhm.
steal as coaches, right?
Oh,
Whether it's
absolutely.
plays
Everything I
or
know, I've stolen.
absolutely. Ditto, I concur. So, but what were the things that I like to know more about? Like, what were you pleasantly surprised about, or what were things that were polar opposites of the way you went about things, but then maybe later you incorporated into your style because you're like, wow, I never thought about doing things that way from her, and I'm absolutely all about it now after you gave it some time to marinate.
Well, the one thing I've always appreciated and I took with me into my coaching career, that Billy was always a stickler about fundamentals, about just the little things, about two-hand passes, jump stop, and she would drill that and really coach that. And I just like the way that the players were like sponges. I mean, they listened to every word she said, and they did not, at that, those times people didn't talk back or roll their eyes. I mean, what Billy
Right.
said was word. And things have changed, of course. And I think myself as a coach, I also learned to evolve with the players of today. And as well as I do, my coaching at the community college level is totally different too,
Yeah.
especially in California.
Yes, it
But
is.
I think that I learned from her, it's just the little things. And Billy was not really big on videos and,
Wow.
about watching the other team
Mm.
or even, going to scout them. And she would always be very confident in that, if we performed and executed our game plan, we would be successful. It was all about the execution and the fine details, paying attention to details that helped our teams be successful.
Well, you can't argue that because you won a national championship while you were at UCLA. No, Nolan Richardson won a national championship at Arkansas, and he didn't watch film either. He had 40 minutes of hell and
Right, yeah.
pressed all over the place and
Mhm.
never watched film. Same concept, same philosophy. Wow, that's amazing, fascinating stuff. And so you knew you wanted to do this for the rest of your life. No psychology professor for you in the
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to use a lot of psychology coaching those players, right?
That's fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why did you leave UCLA? Was it just an
Well,
opportunity or?
Yes,
Yeah.
I had a chance to go be the head coach at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. Go Big
Yeah.
Red.
Talk about a culture change.
Yeah,
Culture
no
shock.
kidding. I mean,
Holy moly.
totally culture change. I mean,
Good Lord.
especially diversity wise, it was going 180 degrees for me. And it was I didn't know how to drive in the snow, much less how to shovel the snow off my driveway. My whole body would be shaking from the cold. I said, what did I do to myself? Every year for 3 years, the first snow that fell, I would stay up. It was at nighttime, I'd stay up and watch the snow. And I'd sit there
Wow.
and say to myself, Colleen, what did you do to yourself? But the people there were very warm and friendly, and the
Wow.
school, the facilities were awesome. Billy had always told me too, whenever you get your first head coaching or a head coaching job, be sure the school has a good football team.
I was going to ask that question.
Football
Mhm.
drives the engine that funds the
Yeah.
other sports.
So how was it being at a football school? That was my next question. First thing I thought about, right? A lot of history with Nebraska then and a little bit
Yes.
after that, but not recently.
Right. It was very interesting. Everybody seems to, what they say, there's 2 seasons, there's football and then there's
Right.
spring football.
Right.
And I remember the first football game I went to, I was walking downtown. I went with some people I'd met. And I didn't have any chance really to go to the bookstore or get, Big Red Nebraska gear. So I happened to have a windbreaker that I brought with me from California. It was powder blue, sort of like
Oh,
UCLA.
Lord.
So I put that on. I'm walking downtown, and I was the only one, Mike. You could have spotted me up 2 miles away. Everybody on the sidewalks walking into the stadium had on red. It was like, I thought, man, I feel like I'm among a Santa Claus convention. It was red and white. And so my first lesson there was don't wear blue on football Saturdays. And so,
Good Lord.
yeah, I didn't do it again, but I also felt like it was very cold in that stadium. So I could last maybe 1 quarter. And then, I ended up I had like 2 season tickets as the basketball coach. And so
Right.
these friends I made, I just gave it to them, and they were just like, they were in heaven. They wanted to pay me for them. I said, no, you're not paying for these. Just go enjoy the game, because I'm not
Wow.
going. I'm going to watch it at home with the heater on. And, because those seats were hard and cold. So I said, go home and be in the comfort of your couch.
Yes, I've been to Michigan Stadium when it's cold, being
Oh
from
gosh,
Michigan,
yeah.
and being in the big house, it's cold.
Yeah. And the first time I tried to back my car out of the driveway, the snow had fallen. There's snow on my driveway. So you're going to laugh, but this is really what I did. I got this garden hose. And in California, when things are on your driveway, you get a hose and just hose it off.
That's right. Oh boy.
So I started running the water, and of course the snow was turning into ice. I went, and I think I ended up walking to a bus stop, took the bus to school, and I said, yeah, I couldn't get my car out of the garage. They go, well, you need to shovel it. I said, well, I didn't have a shovel. I said, so I got the hose and I tried to. They were mortified. The secretary, looked at me. She goes, are you crazy? I said, well, I don't know. I never lived in snow.
Back to California, lady.
Exactly. I
Oh
said,
my gosh, that
yeah,
is hilarious.
yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, the NCAA had formed at this point,
yes, yes,
and Title IX obviously was in its infancy stages.
right.
So, how is it from that perspective? You're in the Midwest, not the South,
Mhm,
but there's a lot of Travis mockery going on still.
mhm.
Just sign of the times, with women and being someone, of the Japanese community, the Asian community. How is it from that perspective? Did people push back the way they did with people of color?
Well, you're talking about when I was in Lincoln?
Yeah, in Lincoln. I mean, you were
Yeah,
in Notre Dame later, but
yeah. Well, more so in Lincoln, not that I had an outward uh pushback, but I felt like when I would be like, say, shopping in Target, there wasn't anybody that looked like me in the store or working there, and I felt like everyone was sort of watching what I put in my basket. This could be just me, groceries or just household.
right.
I felt like everyone was sort of looking to see what I bought. And even sometimes going into restaurants, and by the way, there were no good Japanese restaurants with real sushi there. I
Unbelievable.
found a Chinese restaurant, but it left much to be desired. And my friends took me to what they said, oh man, this is the best Mexican restaurant in town.
Wow.
And after I finished eating there, I thought to myself, well, I don't want to be rude, but this can't hold a candle to the Tex-Mex or the Mexican
Right.
food you get on the West Coast. But and I also, one of the things I really enjoyed there was I actually met and coached against Marion Washington at Kansas
Wow.
University. My first league game at Nebraska was against KU and Lynette Woodard. So she,
Unbelievable.
yeah, that was like, definitely they schooled us, but
Wow.
I actually got to reunite with Coach Washington this past spring at the sneak preview of If Not For Them.
Right.
So
Oh,
it
man.
was, I mean, it was so great to see Marion, because she had been retired. I think she was living in Florida, but I had not seen her in years since she retired from KU.
Wow, that's incredible. And I can't wait to watch the whole thing.
Oh, did you see the sneak preview?
Yeah, I only saw the sneak preview. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch the whole thing too. But
Yeah.
Brenda had the sneak preview at the Final Four, and it was a packed theater, Mike.
my
And
gosh.
you could just feel in the air
Mm.
during and even after, when they had the panel and the Q&A, just the excitement and the
Oh,
exuberance of the audience members that could really relate and understand
Mm.
how women's basketball has evolved and the struggles and just the things we saw on the screen. I mean, it was very touching.
it was. Yeah, I was moved a
Mhm.
number of times
Yes.
by not just from the historical component of it, and
Mhm.
the interviews were phenomenal, and cinematography. And this
Mhm.
is just the preview. Like,
Yes.
just
Yes.
hearing these stories, and obviously, if you're interested in something, it's
Mhm.
going to resonate with you more and impact you differently. Did you have women of color on your team when you were coaching back then?
I did. Once I got there, now backtrack just a little. The year that before I left UCLA, I recruited Jackie Joyner
Hmm.
from East St. Louis, Lincoln
Wow, I
High
didn't know
School.
that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Her coach, Coach Ernest Rickens, was persistent in calling Billy at UCLA. Say, I've got a player here that, I'd like you to look at. She's interested in UCLA. And he
Wow.
kept saying, my whole team is good. And so, when high school coaches tell you that, it's like, okay, sure, right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so she said, I think you should go out there and go watch his team play. So I went out, flew into St. Louis, stayed in St. Louis, drove across the river to East St. Louis. And
Mm.
I tell you what, I'll never forget the first time I went in that gym at that school.
Wow.
That gym was packed. People were all dressed up. Men were in jackets and ties, and the ladies and everyone was dressed. It was a great event. The girls basketball team at that time, the Lincoln Tigerettes, was obviously a very good show. And I got there just when the JV game was ending. So I got to see the end of the JV games. I go, hey, there's some pretty good athletes on the JV team. Wonder what the varsity looks like. Then the cheerleaders came out, and I'm sitting there watching them. I go, these cheerleaders are more athletic than some of the basketball players I've seen on other teams.
Wow.
Then the Tigrettes came out, and boy, warming up, I was just like, I think my jaw was on the ground. I remember I watched the team play. Their 5 starters all ended up going to Division I schools.
Wow.
I went back to the hotel room that night, and I was so excited. I wrote up like a little report on all the players I had seen, and then we continued to pursue and recruit Jackie to UCLA. So the next year I get the Nebraska job, and I remember, first of all, I had a really just a wonderful time going to that school. They made me feel so welcome, and Coach Riggins
Wow.
and I became friends.
Mm.
I got to know like the principal, but there were 3 players that were juniors when Jackie was a senior, who then were the seniors. So I recruited 3 of them to come play at Nebraska.
Wow.
And so I believe they might have been the first African Americans to play there in a long while, if not among the
Mm.
first.
Wow.
And it was a culture shift for them too. You know, they had a little bit of adjustment time, as did the white players on the team, just about learning about other cultures.
Besides just the pushback of the times, things we know about, how, based on your mentorship, your dad, and Coach Billy, like, how did you change the culture? Because that's such a big thing with coaches coming in.
Mhm.
You don't want to ignore the history,
Right,
but you
right.
want to and take into consideration the community and the state. People bleed red,
Yes.
but you want to be who you are and authentic to who you are. And so how did you find that balance, coming in there?
I think myself and my 2 assistants at that time, we didn't really coach the white players differently from the black players. We just really were, told them our expectations. They all did all the drills. We made them go hard. And I think that just sort of resonated off the court too. Now, there was an incident where I guess one of the white players and one of the black players got into it. So I had to call them in my office, say, that's just not the thing to do. We're a team. We need to have teamwork here. And they reconciled and became friends. And actually, to this day, I actually stay in touch with one of my assistant coaches, and one of my players, Deborah Powell,
Mm.
from East St. Louis, actually became the mayor there. So,
Wow.
I called, I said, I sort of joked with her. I said, Deborah, I knew you had it in you. You had the gift of gab. You knew how to talk to everybody, and you're a freaking politician. And, you became the mayor of East St. Louis. And so the other one, Crystal Coleman, went overseas and actually almost became a Dutch citizen, became very fluent in Dutch, and recently came back to the US, but she played over 10 years there in the Dutch Pro League.
Wow, that's incredible. So you had a lot of stops. Any stop that you want to talk about, feel free. But I want to ask you about Muffet McGraw.
Mm-hmm.
And she since retired from Notre Dame, but obviously a national champion like you. What was it like? Because that was a little earlier, before she had the type of influence that she still even has now, especially on social media. She's very
Yes.
active on Twitter and outspoken, as she should be.
Right.
Shout out to Coach McGraw. But what did you learn from her, and how did you see sort of her evolve, and what did you take from her? Because she had to evolve, obviously, throughout the years, like everyone has had to. Otherwise, the time's going to pass you by, right?
Definitely. And shout out also to Muffet. And I look upon her, even though I was only at Notre Dame for a year, I look upon
Right.
her as a mentor.
Mhm.
And looking back in my career, I regret leaving Notre Dame after a year. The reason why I left is because well, let me just tell you a little amusing story. So Muffet contacts me and says, hey, I have an opening. Could you come up here for an interview? So I did. And at that time I was an assistant at the University of Texas in Austin.
Mhm.
So I go up there and, we're talking and I said, hey, how's the weather here? And Muffet goes, pretty mild. I said, okay. So I get there, I take the job because, you always hear things about the Notre Dame and the Golden Dome. And I saw all
Yeah.
that and I think Notre Dame and UCLA, of all the stops or schools I've ever been to, those are among the most beautiful campuses in the country.
Mhm.
So I just going there saying touchdown Jesus and
Right.
things like that. I just like, I've got to come here and just work. And so when I get there, it was September, I remember this. There's a snowfall. So I remember I went into the office, I told Muff, I said, hey Muff, there's snow out there. I said, didn't you tell me the weather's mild? She just threw her head back, laughed, and she goes, we lied. So
Oh man, that's hilarious. I love
yeah.
it.
But there was a lot of similarities in coaching between Muffet and Billy, and that's probably why I really gravitated to both of them as my mentors. Muffet was very, very passionate about details. She would write up the practice plan and very competitive in such a way that at noontime, like lunchtime, she would herself would go down and play noontime hoops.
I
So
love it.
sometimes we say, hey, where's Coach McGraw? They say, oh, she's playing noontime hoops. And she hated to lose, in noontime hoops. But she would like really, she was into game film. So she would look at videos much more so than Billy was. But again, everyone has their own idiosyncrasies and their preferences about coaching methods and styles, and it worked for her. And look where it helped propel that program to the upper echelon of women's basketball.
Oh yeah, one of the legends, one of the
Mhm.
all-time greats. Absolutely. And then so you found your way back to the West Coast, huh? Yeah.
I did because at that time, Joan Bonvicini was the longtime Long Beach State coach. And she called me up and said, hey, Colleen, would you like to come back to California, be the recruiting coordinator here? Now, never, Mike, in my wildest dreams did I ever think Joan would leave Long Beach. So I went there, took the job there. And the first year I'm there, Joan gets the Arizona job. She brings myself and the other assistant, Glenn McDonald, to Tucson for, to look it over and, wanted us to join her. And I said, you know what, Joan? I haven't even unpacked from Notre Dame yet. And I don't want to move again right now because in the meantime, UC Irvine had contacted me about their job.
Mm.
So that's how, I got the UC Irvine.
Coach, I gotta ask you,
Mhm,
because you were the underdog that year at
mhm.
Irvine, when you won the tournament and got the automatic bid. Well, I mean, the storming of the court, we see it every year now, and
Mhm.
it's just one of the greatest things in sports is to not
Mhm.
only watch March Madness,
Yes.
but the teams that not many people hear about, from the West Coast bias to the small D1s and the mid majors, like like just tell everyone what it was like to get that bid, and just the moment the clock hit double zeros, like what was that like for you and the players? Oh my goodness, I just can't even.
The players, of course, went bonkers. I was super excited also, but the problem was they had sort of somebody from media grabbed me and said, hey, we need you to come across the court here and do an interview
Oh my
with the
God.
TV. So I went and, sat down and actually, I think it was Marianne Stanley and Dr. Mary Alice Jeremiah were the two media people
Wow.
there that were going to interview, and they went to a timeout. Meanwhile, my team is on the court, hooping it up, jumping up and down. And I look at them, I go, I'm missing all that, And they looked at me like, well, we're going to interview you. And so I missed being on the court like that. And
Oh,
so, it was because we actually beat the University of the Pacific in the finals, and we had lost twice to them in very close games. And I remember our point guard at that time, as the seconds ticked down to the end of the game, she just kept the ball out there at the top of the key and pounded higher, harder,
right.
higher, harder, till when the buzzer went off, she just
Slammed
threw
it.
that ball down. And, you know,
Well,
That's,
that's amazing. How was it getting your piece of the net? Did you cry or
no, I don't think so. I
no?
think I was just happy and,
Wow.
it was,
Who'd you
just-
play in the first round that year?
I think it was actually Cal State Fullerton.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to think who we beat in the semis. I don't remember now who we beat in the semis. I don't remember. I just know we beat Pacific in the
Yeah.
finals.
Wow.
But then, of course, then you watch the selection show.
Right.
Who do we draw? Stanford. So I ended up
Unbelievable.
going to Stanford, and I think I've always admired Tara and her program, and to go there for our first round. And when we walked into practice in Maples Pavilion, they had the curtains sort of pulled because they were on the court.
Mhm.
And I remember and they had a player that was, I think, 6'5" and 6'4". They were really a tall team that year.
Mhm.
And I remember overhearing my players go, "Oh my gosh, look how tall they are. They're like trees." I go, "Okay, we don't need them to be thinking about that." But I'm thinking to myself, yikes, yikes. So, but that was just a great experience. When you get to the NCAAs, everything ratchets up a notch, in
Right.
terms of not only competition, but attendance and, the media.
Excitement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
something that you always hope all of your players get to experience.
Did you ever think the NCAA tournament for the women would be at the level that it is now? Or is that what you were hoping that?
I was always hoping for that, and it's so exciting. And I mean, just to be there this past year, I go every year to the Final Four and the coaches convention, but just to see the fan engagement and just the arena. I mean, the arena is just so full of electricity when you
Oh.
walk in there. And I always remember I think they seem to have the same female announcer for the games, and she'll always say, "Welcome to the 2023 Women's Basketball National Championship." And, that always just gives me a thrill to hear that, because the crowd goes nuts. And, it's just a great event. And to see that the championship game drew over 9 million people this year, was the highest, most watched women's basketball game, is exciting. And it can only grow from there.
Yeah, and people that were always trying to create these false narratives with women's sports in general, whether it's soccer or the World Cup
Right.
or women's basketball. How you like me now? So I want to ask you about being in the WNBA in the late '90s. I think it was the second year that they were in existence, and how that experience was, and why'd you leave, and just what you learned from being with some of the best players that have ever played.
Well, I was with the Sparks in 1998 and 1999, and I learned real quickly that coaching in the W is more, of course, a business, which I get that. It's jobs to be had, jobs to lose, and then to hire some new players or sign new players.
Yeah.
But I think it's all more about tendencies of the other team, and just preparing your team to do things on the court that you can counter what the other team's going to do. And I started off working for Julie Rousseau, and she got replaced by Orlando Woolridge.
Right.
And I loved working for Orlando. He was just a great people person to the players. I mean, I learned a lot from him. He would greet every
Wow.
player, every practice, just go around and point at all of them. "Good morning, Delisha. Good morning, Lisa." And just make it an effort to always say their name and make eye contact. And I thought that was great. And he, would just sort of pare down practices as the season wore on. And, but, it's just about what I really missed, of course, was being on a campus with a team that, you would see besides in practice. You'd see going to classes, things like that.
Right.
In the pros, you basically see your team at practices, or, and then they go about their day. And on the road, you go have shoot around, go to the games, but we go back to the hotel, and everyone's basically on their own. So I sort of miss the camaraderie of a college team, I think. But hey, I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't say no to getting back in the W.
Yeah, right. Even now, that would be
Yeah.
amazing. Well,
Yeah.
expansion is coming.
Mhm. Yes.
Not only of roster sizes, but
Yeah.
two more teams are
Franchises.
probably coming. Franchises, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they would be wise to bring you on even as a consultant.
I would love that.
Yeah, player development, those
Mm.
types of things. Do you like how the game's evolved? Because obviously, not every coach believes in having both feet on the floor before they make a pass, and they allow no look passes, and
Right.
the game's evolved. Do you like the direction that's it's going? Because Steph Curry, for everyone who said that Michael transformed the
Mhm.
game, and on the men's side probably more, but Steph has transformed the game for
Mhm.
both sides, as did Kobe, with regards to his support and his
Mhm.
Mamba mentality. But how do you like the game these days? I mean, I think skill wise, there's still huge upside, but wow, I mean, some of the things the women are
Yes.
doing are just mind blowing.
Yes, it is. I mean, I like, as a spectator, of course, I love it because it's entertaining. But still, sometimes you see some of the turnovers. It's like, well, probably because you tried to do a one hand behind the back pass and the person wasn't there or ready for it. But I think, like I said, I'm a fan now or a spectator. In fact, every March, I tell my friends, I said, every March I get March Madness really bad, where I am like on my couch screaming at the TV, but that's when I really want to coach again. And my friends that are in Division I college, they go, you don't want to get in this rat race now. Things have changed, and the portal, of course, is a big game changer. And I said, everyone tells me that, but I think I look at that as a challenge. I think I would love mining the portal and just finding out about players and things like
Free
that.
agency.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, talking about the pros, I mean, look at New York now, I think is like the first super team. So I think
Right.
some of these other teams are soon to go that route, just like the NBA teams did.
Yeah, it's remarkable to watch. And you look at, the NBA,
Mhm.
and you see Miami, and they have, what is
Yeah.
it, 6 undrafted players on their team.
Exactly.
So, who knows what the formula is, right?
Right. And I mean,
Yeah,
it could also blow up. I mean, look what happened in the NBA at Brooklyn, and then Phoenix
right.
underachieved. And so I think it's just all about chemistry.
It
And
is.
the team culture. I mean, they use that term so much now in the playoffs. It's heat culture. And that now has really intrigued me because I recently heard a speaker talk about watching one of Eric Spoelstra's practice. And he said, every one of those Heat players from starter to 12th man is locked in. I mean, they
Yep.
subscribe to that culture. And that's hard to build, and it's even harder to maintain it.
Well, Jimmy Butler had a bad rap in Philly, and they got rid of him.
Yeah, look what
These
he's
false
doing.
narratives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's incredible. So it's so great to, hear you and your coaching mentorship, Zoom calls, and just to know that you're still passionate about the game. And I always tell my players, this is going to be my 32nd year of coaching.
Mhm.
And I do have a plan. I know I'm a white older male. I know I don't look 54. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. If I had
I
shaved
thought you were
today,
24.
right, exactly. For those of you listening and not watching. But in all seriousness, I had a 13-year plan that when I coached college ball, for a long time, 24 years,
Uh-huh.
15 years on the men's side. And what is that? 9 years on the women's side. And this is going to be my
Mhm.
17th year on the women's side and girls side. And, it resonates with me more and I love it. But I do have a plan to coach collegiately, intercollegiately, or professionally when my daughter's done with high school, because to your point earlier about, what one of the coaches or several of them had said, you don't want to get back into this rat race. I want to be more from the life coaching perspective, the player development side. And as a professional basketball skills trainer, that's what I really want to be a part of, whether they're there 1 year or they're there, all 4 or 5 or shit at this point, 6 years.
Right.
Because I just feel like if they feel nowadays, which is a little bit different than when we started, that you care about them as people,
Mhm.
it's not a guarantee that retention is going to be maintained necessarily, but you know, you will get more out of them if you care about them as people,
Mhm.
and you can help them obviously become better basketball players. And so I don't think without a holistic, harmonious approach towards coaching nowadays that you're not going to get the most out of players. And it's just something that is going to be in high demand going forward because you just can't coach the way that the old school coaches traditionally did.
Mhm.
And you're just not going to get the most out of players without mindfulness and teaching them
Mhm.
about diet and obviously helping them on the court, you know, skill wise. But, you know, mental health is a big deal. There's just so
Right.
many other components that I think someone like you, more you than me, but, you know, still me, um, bring to the table, you know, having coached, you know, so many decades that, yeah, we can say, well, younger coaches are relatable. But if you're sort of with a younger
Mhm.
mentality as an older coach, I think you have the best of both worlds.
Well, I think to your point, Mike, is that when you pour into a player much more so than on the court or the X's and O's, they feel like you've invested in them personally, like, you know,
Yeah.
you understand or maybe can relate to their struggles or frustrations.
Right.
And I think when they feel that, then they try to reciprocate by maybe, you know, trying harder or working harder or really wanting to pour back into, you know, into you as their coach. Or many times it's, as you know, at the community college level, we're also a parental figure for them
Absolutely.
in their lives. And, you know, they have so many other issues like hunger, financial, shelter. So it becomes so much more of our job than just on the court. And
Yeah.
so I think, you know, when you can reach out and show empathy and just really interest in what's going on in their lives, I think it reciprocates in their effort and their dedication.
Absolutely. I mean, I enjoyed my time at Mesa College
Mhm.
as a part of the California Community College system, and I know
Mhm.
you did at West LA, and we did beat you, by the way.
Yeah, I know you did.
Just want to let everybody know that we got lucky that game. That you had an off game. I think you were missing some players, or you just it was an early game on Saturday or something. It was just a weird. It was a weird energy because I knew you had a good team, and I was like, this is gonna be a tough game for us. And I think we just got lucky. I certainly didn't outcoach you,
No.
but yeah, you know it. But it's just an interesting thing. And now, even though I'm at maybe the best job I've ever had at a low income first generation high school, to your point about so many other things that are
Yeah.
important. I never thought I would coach scholastically. In the beginning was like, I'm not coaching high school basketball. I'm a college coach, and I pushed
Mhm.
back, and I'm like, man, you talk about the best job I've ever. I mean, you know, you talk about pivoting and having to adjust,
Mhm.
you know, not only changing the culture, but, you know, like we work on airball rebounds every day.
Mm.
I mean, if you worked on an airball rebounding drill at the level that you've been at, they would laugh at you.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I told Matt Doherty this, former, you know, teammate of
Uh-huh.
Michael Jordan and played at
Right.
North Carolina, former head coach at Notre Dame,
Mhm.
and other, you know, in North Carolina. He said, I respect it because you're adjusting to what you have to do in
Mhm.
order to put your players in the best possible position, to your point. So, wow, amazing. So, anything else before we get to the rapid fire that we didn't talk about that you wanted to touch on? I'll leave the floor for you at the end as well.
Well, you know, last month, May was the conclusion of the AAPI Heritage Month.
Right.
And I think lately, more so in the past couple of years, I've really become frustrated because the Asian coaches seem to not be looked at, interviewed, or considered even for positions that
Interesting.
I feel they're all deserving of. And I told a friend of mine who got really frustrated. He was trying to get an assistant coach job at another school. And he kept hearing these things. Well, first of all, you know, you don't look like our players. But I said, look, if someone said that to me, I would say, of course I look like your player. I'm a human being, you know, and it
Unbelievable.
shouldn't matter if I'm green, purple, polka dotted pink. You know, I'm a human being, and I feel like I can relate to people of any color or nationality or background. And it's just people just look past us. And I said, I feel like I want to get a t-shirt and say invisible, underappreciated, or, you know, something like that. But I'm sort of starting to get on my soapbox and say, you know, let's push forward. And right now I probably maybe try to mentor about 7 to 8 assistant coaches to help them, you know, either up their game or maybe even go after some different jobs. And I know they get frustrated when, and it's not just Asian coaches that I'm talking to,
Right.
but you know, I feel their pain, and I just always try to encourage them and say, well, do it this way, or try this, or, you know, send an email this way, or tell your head coach this. And so that's how I'm just trying to give back to our profession. But I'm just hoping that somebody, you know, will get a chance to get a BCS head coach job, or
Right.
like Natalie Nakase, who's the assistant coach for the Las Vegas Aces. She's more than qualified to be her own head coach now.
Right.
Whether or not she wants to be, or maybe had a chance, I don't know that, but I do know, and I feel that she was very instrumental in helping the Aces win the WNBA championship last year.
Yeah, and you know, it's a great point about allies and shattering glass ceilings, and there's just always going to be some form of misogyny, sexual discrimination,
Right.
you know, racial bias. It's just unfortunately the way it is. And maybe, you know, when we hit the 100th anniversary of Title IX, we'll see things maybe a little bit different. But yeah, we all need to be allies. And, you know, I think people of influence who leverage their platforms to advocate for people in these spaces that are even more marginalized than others, it should never be overlooked, because it's still continuing today, even though people want us to sweep it, you know, under the rug. So, okay, let's get to the this or that, and I'll leave the floor for you. Wow, what an amazing conversation. So favorite mascot, the Bruin, Cornhusker, Anteaters, the Fighting Irish, or Stingers up for Herky the Hornet, ladies and gentlemen. Sac State, let's go.
UCLA Bruin, go Bruins.
Wow. Oh man, that's amazing. I did invite Coach Close today, but she was busy, so just wanted to let you know that.
Okay.
And Elizabeth was supposed to come on too, but she got busy as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So wait, best food was where at which stop?
The best food was probably at UCLA, because there's a lot of Japanese restaurants there. You know, I love sushi, and you know, you could find any type of sushi in LA.
Well, that's the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. UCLA is going to win out on every question. So
No,
thanks for
not
joining us.
necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay, so your favorite professional athlete of any sport of all time?
Of all time. Wow. That's a hard one. I can't name just one.
Okay, name 3.
Okay. Tim Duncan. I like it
Wow.
because he's always humble in what he appears to be. Steph Curry.
Wow.
And Jackie Joyner Kersey. Actually, Jackie goes to number 1, because in all the years since she has been a worldwide famous athlete, she has never changed. She's just the same Jackie, humble,
Multi-sport
nice.
athlete.
Yes. And I mean, just she walks in a room, her smile just lights it up, and you just feel so happy being around her.
I mean, she was groundbreaking too, along with the other Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, but Jackie has never forgotten her roots either. She has her Jackie Joyner Kersey Center and school in East St. Louis. So
Amazing.
I have to give her credit for that. And plus, like I said, she's just a great person.
Flowers, definitely to her. If you could be anyone for one day, who would it be?
I would like to be Tina Turner.
Of course. Now, for those of you that don't know this, which most of you don't, we got a tutorial in the most recent coaching session on Tina Turner, and I didn't know a lot of the stuff that you shared with us. So, man, shout out to Tina Turner. What a legend. Did you have a favorite TV show growing up?
I used to on Saturdays, I love the cartoons, Mighty Mouse. That's way, way back, okay? But my
Uh,
other favorite show was Desperate Housewives.
Oh my God. Wow. Man, that's full transparency, ladies and gentlemen. Unbelievable. Did you have a favorite movie?
Of course, Love and Basketball.
Of course, right, that you were a big part of. Wow, how was that experience? Did you have like close interaction with Spike Lee? Like, oh my
No,
goodness.
actually, Spike Lee, I think he signed on as the producer. It was Gina
Mm,
Prince Bythewood, the director, who,
okay.
the most recent acclaim is The Woman King.
Hmm.
And Gina actually in the industry has really expanded diversity and inclusion in her hiring and the cast and the background people are the people behind the camera. So
Right.
shout out to Gina. And
Wow.
also, I mean, hate to be repeating this, but Gina is a Bruin. And
See, I told you we should have just ended the show.
no, her son is on the baseball team, but Gina is a great person, but she just is really all about diversity and inclusion. So shout out to her.
Yeah, I read something the other day where the University of Michigan has over nearly 150 people in place for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And whether you're talking about that or Judy Sweet, who's been on the show numerous times, first female president in the history of the NCAA, or the Bill Russell rule, all
Mhm.
these things that are in place in order to bridge the gap and be vessels to have one narrative eventually instead of two
Right,
or
right,
more
right.
than two. Yeah. So what comes to mind when you hear these people's names? Nelson Mandela,
Dignified, an icon.
Colin Kaepernick,
I think he stirred people in one way or another.
Oprah.
Oprah, she's on my bucket list. I would love to meet Oprah. I love Oprah.
Yeah, she's incredible. President Obama.
Well, we share the same birthday, Barack and I, so I would one day like to meet both he and Michelle Obama.
Can't tell you how often I hear that. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to meet not just him, but Michelle.
Michelle and Oprah would be on my bucket
Oh
list.
my goodness. Yeah. They'd be on a lot of people's bucket lists.
Yes, I'm sure
Lisa.
they're on everyone's bucket list.
Yeah. Well, shit. Lisa Leslie.
Lisa Leslie is another icon for our sport. She has become known in other avenues besides on the court. She coaches, I think, on that 3-on-3 league, and
Mhm.
I've seen her on a couple different commercials. So she always, though, was poised.
Amazing. George Floyd.
George Floyd is a unfortunate symbol of where America is today in terms of unjust injustices.
Yeah, I remember watching Rodney King,
Yeah.
and this was just a whole nother level. But yeah, I think, and the thing that people don't know about George Floyd is that he was getting his life together. He was turning it
Mhm.
around, and people on the other side want to always point out, the fact that he had some bad moments, but he was really truly committed to turning his life around. So shout out to George Floyd and his brother Phil and his sister and the entire
Mhm.
family.
Well,
Yeah.
getting back to excuse me, talking about the Rodney King incident.
Mm.
After that unfortunate incident, grew the Watts Summer Games in Los Angeles.
Wow.
So you remember the Watts Summer Games?
I don't.
Well, okay, check it out, Mike, because the Watts Summer Games became like a summer competition in all sports that tried to be a unifying for all the communities there.
Wow. I had no idea.
Uh-huh.
And so it's disbanded. It's not a
I
thing.
don't think they do it anymore, but it was the Watts Summer
Wow.
Game. Yeah.
Huh. Incredible. Uh, Donald Trump,
Censor my remark.
Kamala Harris.
She represents not only California, but Oakland, Oaktown, and hopefully she will continue her political career.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Where do I see myself?
Yeah.
Winning the lottery. I'm still mad I did not win that
Man.
$1 billion lottery because
Yeah.
every day I think of what I could be buying now.
Wow. You ain't kidding. Well, and hopefully working in the WNBA in some capacity. And
Yes.
then last question. So if you
Mhm.
could have any 5 people at your dinner table, past or present, dead or alive, but you've never met them before. Obviously, we just heard 3 of them.
Mhm.
But anybody else, and 2 more besides them?
Dead or alive, who I would have at my dinner table?
Yeah, or breakfast
Well-
table.
Okay, you're talking besides Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, and Tina Turner?
Yeah, well, and then Barack, so that'd be 4. But if you want to have 5 different ones, or 1 more besides those 4, or if you want to do 5 other ones, it's up to you.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Mm.
Just one other person.
And everybody always tells me I should ask that question in the beginning so you have time to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Dead or alive, past or present.
John Wooden.
Wow, you never met John Wooden?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to work as camps.
Right, so you knew him, sort of. So it has to be somebody you haven't met.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, I could
Okay.
ask the question at people that you've met because that would be interesting too, right?
I
You've
haven't
met some
met
incredible people. Wait, who would you have at your table of people that you've met?
Jackie Joyner,
Yeah,
Muffet McGraw,
knew it.
Billy Moore. Gosh,
Wow, what,
people that I've met. I have
what
to
a
think about the other 2. Wow, those are hard questions, Mike. Ooh. You stumped me there.
no, those are great answers. Well, anything else fascinating
Hey, I'd
conversation?
invite you, Mike.
Hey, somebody else invited me, Barbara Majeski from the Today Show, and then
Mhm.
she threw me out of the table. She kicked me out because she thought about Charles Barkley, and she's like, you know what? Sorry, but I gotta have Charles at my table. So I have yet to be at anyone's table. Plus, we've met before. Well, it could be at the table that
Well,
I could be the
I would invite Charles Barkley to my table of people I haven't met. I think he's hilarious. I enjoy listening to him.
He is hilarious. Wow, it'll be a sad day when
Yeah.
inside the NBA, TNT on TNT is broken up.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
they are so entertaining.
So entertaining. So who do you think's going to win both the NBA and WNBA titles this year? Last question.
The WNBA title, I think the Aces are in a good position to repeat. If not them, then I would have to say the Liberty.
Wow.
And for the NBA, I think Denver's going to win, but I want the Heat to win
So do I agree. with
because
those
they
sentiments.
just because of who they are as a team. Like you said, they had
Absolutely.
undrafted choices. They're Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo. They lost those 2 players, so they have cobbled together a mentality and a culture that is really enjoyable to watch.
It really is. And Coach Spoelstra, shout out to him. I mean, one of
Yes,
the all-time greats already. Started as a video coordinator,
right.
and Duncan Robinson started a D3 school.
Yeah.
Like, are you
exactly.
kidding me?
Yeah. What D3 school was it?
It was in Massachusetts. I can't remember if it was
Okay.
Amherst or Williams. I can't remember which one.
wow.
But yeah, and then he went to Michigan. I know not many people know that. Like, just an incredible story.
Hey, Gabe Vincent is from Modesto, and he comes back to the Sacramento area to train with a guy every year.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, he
Amazing.
played for the Stockton Kings for a while. He
Oh,
went
man.
to St. Mary's in Stockton, I think.
Interesting.
He transferred there.
Yeah, well, the transfer portal and NIL has definitely changed the game at the college level. But anything else, man, fascinating. I appreciate your time. It's been amazing. And hopefully we'll cross paths again. Maybe we'll be on opposing sides of the WNBA sideline one day. That would be
Right.
amazing. But like you, I think I would prefer the college level to be, whether it's a chief of staff or a consultant in some way. That's my dream, is to finish my career at the highest level, because I think I have a lot to offer.
Mhm.
And hopefully I can leverage what I've been doing for these 13 years to offer some sort of support for a program to make them better in some way. And I just want to be a part of something bigger than myself. And like I've never really had a true, like, brilliant mentor, and that's just a dream of mine, to be around someone who's a brilliant mind. And it's no knock against anyone I've ever been around, but I just can't imagine what that must be like, just to walk in every day, being around someone who just, man, not only lights up a room, but just is a brilliant mind,
Mhm.
you know, on every level of what it takes to be a successful, you know, and like you said in one of your quotes, you love being in leadership positions because of the responsibility that goes along with that and how many lives you can impact.
Well, Mike, I want to congratulate you on what you've been doing on your podcast, and just keep doing what you're doing and standing up for and trying to help people advance their causes. I think that's awesome. And I look forward to seeing you on our future growth mindset coaches Zooms.
Absolutely. Well, and again, it can't be stated enough about what you've meant to the game, the women's game, and the various communities. And, you know, the chapters are not done yet, but, you know, you've impacted so many lives. And I just think, you know, like I said, full transparency, when I met you on the sidelines for the first time, I, you know, I probably did the women's game a disservice for not really understanding the history, not only of California community colleges and women's coaches in that space, but just, you know, the women's game in general. And I'm so grateful for this podcast because I have the opportunity to amplify voices like yours and stories like yours. And, you know, if not for them. So until next time, everybody, much love. Colleen Matsuhara. Thank you so much for joining us today in the Sports Daily. You're welcome back anytime. You have an open seat at this table anytime, open invitation. So thanks again
Thank
for
you. I
joining us.
appreciate the opportunity. Best of luck.
All right, talk soon. All
Okay.
right, much love,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Appreciate you. Peace. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope you enjoy today's outtakes.
Morning.
Hey, Colleen.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
You got the video working today, or what's going on over there?
I think so. Let me see. Hold on.
We're having technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen.
How about now?
Perfect. Things are looking good there.
Sacramento.
That's what I'm talking about. Man, that's amazing. How's mom?
She had a great day yesterday. She played bingo at her facility,
Ooh.
came in second by $1.
Bingo's so underrated.
Yeah, it's fun. Actually, I sort of like it. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm great. Everything's good. And made my bed this morning, which is one of the things I started doing when the pandemic started to make sure that I hold myself accountable. And
I think I just heard a military guy that gave a commencement, and his advice, first thing he said was, be sure you make your bed, because if anything else goes wrong all day, you did something right, and you come home and it's
Ooh.
ready for you.
It's ready.
I thought, man, that's really clever.
I
That
don't
was
just
great.
make my bed. I make it with hospital folds. I got, you know what I'm saying? Like, it
Well,
doesn't
what
take
about
me
the
a minute.
military corner?
Hey, I know how to tuck like in the corners the way that they did in the old days. Come on now.
Yeah,
I know I don't look that old, but you know what I'm saying? But hey,
you're well preserved.
well, I got to give you know, my family credit for that one. But all right, I'm gonna do an intro, and then we're gonna chop it up. I'm very excited and honored.
Okay, wait a minute. I want to tell you, props
Yeah.
for your gear you got on. If not for them, that's great.
Yeah.
Had I known you were going to wear that, I would have worn my sweatshirt, because I'm actually representing the 916.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's
Hey,
Danielle
whether
Biglione's Skills Academy.
I love that 916. It's the opposite of our area code here, 619. So let's go.
Yeah. But she has been player development. She's actually now assistant coach with the Sparks. I have to call her. I want to find out what the hell happened last night. They were up 17-4 first quarter.
Yeah, you know how that goes. It's not how you
Yeah.
start, it's how you
Oh, yeah.
finish, right? Yeah. Thanks again for joining us today, everyone. Feel free to send me an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. Also, check out my link tree. It's /Mike Hootner. Also, like to thank a few people. 40 Tons Brand is a socially conscious cannabis brand, and they're doing amazing things. Check them out. We'd also like to thank Moolah Kicks, the first ever female brand basketball shoe in the history of the world. We'd also like to encourage you, if you're having a hard day and if you're feeling like you just don't want to live anymore, all you have to do is dial 988 from any phone, and there will be someone there 24/7, 365. So don't feel like you have to fight this battle alone. Don't forget to do your self-breast and self-testicular exams every month. It's really important, as early detection is the key. Remember, Black Lives Matter. Reach out to your local and state politicians for any individual or group that you feel are being marginalized. Stop the bullying. Stop the Asian hate. Let's end gun violence with common sense laws. Let's be allies for the LGBTQIA+ community. And I challenge those of you in the white space to be anti-racist, to be bridges and vessels, to help bridge the gaps between Black and white America. And remember, until next time, it takes a village, everyone. Much love.